Hello and welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I'm going to be covering the 10 stages of a Metamancer in Deepwoken. This goes over metamancing PvP players who usually dwell the Chime of Conflict. This is likely the temporary finale to the series until after a new attunement releases, so don't expect any more anytime soon. Now let's get straight into it. In Stage 1, the future Metamancer is one of two people, either early release Deepwoken players before a meta actually started, or later joining players who, like the concept of Deepwoken as a permadeath hardcore parry-based game. The former starts out as the same as everyone else who started early Deepwoken, just going along and progressing whatever to see if it works. Nothing super specific here. For the newly joining players, you'll likely start out already knowing what build you want to use or play with because you saw it on YouTube and thought it looked fun, good, or cool. Meaning you will likely have already joined like 22 Discord servers for builds, and all of them are owned by YouTubers who have more Discord members than subscribers, even though you need to subscribe to get into the server and see the builds. Really shows where their priorities lie. Anyway, soon after, the Metamancer will reach Stage 2. At Stage 2, the soon-to-be actual Metamancer is annoyed with the game as a whole pretty early on. They usually get angry because of a mix of Voidwalkers, PvE, and PvP inexperience, resulting in them dying to their own skill issue. This really isn't a huge issue, but most of the time this results in the Deepwoken players at this stage starting to kind of cheat the progression. Deepwoken, in my opinion, is best played blind, but lots of the time people who join newly don't have the time to do that, since if you didn't start the game when it came out, playing blind is nowhere near as viable as it was when everyone was doing it. Because if you're starting the game now, you're basically 3 years behind the people who have played it and the people who got to play it blind when it first came out. And even then, a lot of people didn't play it blind on release because, that one advanced progression guide that got leaked a day early, and then the bell requirements got leaked a week into game release. Regardless, this soft cheating leads into Stage 3. In Stage 3, the Metamancer player is likely making it farther while progressing, reaching higher levels, but most of the time players in this stage aren't actually much better at the game. Their overuse of guides and attempting to make builds without adequate equipment, and by that I mean Moon's Eye tomes, usually results in them getting hard stuck at like power 11 trying to min-max their builds. But since they don't have Moon's Eye tomes yet, it's kind of just a loop of progression spam until you get literally every needed talent from just luck, which by the way sucks to do. This really only causes more frustration and potential burnout from the game, which is the next half stage. At Stage 3.5, the potential Metamancer player has gotten burnt out from the bad progression for a combination of reasons. Their refusal to play the game normally by just going throughout the world and progressing just isn't fun. Starting Deepwoken, you're intended to explore and find stuff on your own until you found optimal progression routes that you like. But the burnt out soon-to-be Metamancer player is just trying to do the best progression route he sees on YouTube, following it as a guide to make his build, when in reality you shouldn't really focus on builds until you're like at least half decent at the game. Some players in Stage 3.5 actually end up quitting the game and never make it to Stage 4, which is a surprising amount of people who watch my videos. But if you don't play Deep and still like my videos, thank you. And also check out the live channel, I don't do Deepwoken on there. Anyway, on to Stage 4. After enough burnout and the same medial progression loop, the soon-to-be Metamancer is decent enough at the game now to progress an actual build and reach power 20. And maybe even get Bell. Not like it matters since all of their time will be delegated into the Chime of Conflict, like they're on a strict deadline to hit Godseeker. The unique thing about metamancing players is that becoming a Metamancer in itself is actually a pretty late stage of the game, as many people never become good enough or have the resources, Moon's Eyes, required to progress meta builds every week, but soon after they will launch into the most important stage of a Metamancer's Deepwoken career, Stage 5. At Stage 5, the Metamancer player has likely just found out about or started dwelling within the Chime of Conflict. Get it? Dwelling like chime? Chime of dwelling? Chime of dwelling of conflict? Dwelling chime Deepwoken? Why did I write that into the script? Sorry. Anyway, at Stage 5, they've discovered the Chime of Conflict, and it quickly becomes their favorite way to play the game for some reason. It's terrible. Their dopamine receptors spike seeing their elo go up after every win, and they're already getting unimaginably angry every time they lose. So they fit right in with the Deepwoken PvP community perfectly. In Stage 6, the Chime player has played enough Chime, and they begin thinking of ways to improve. Just kidding, a Metamancer would never admit the fault in their own abilities, so instead of focusing on the build that they already have and use within the Chime of Conflict, they now try optimizing their builds to be as powerful and ideally broken as possible. The first stage of true Metamancing. But there is a problem. They probably aren't nearly smart enough to make their own broken build, so they go to YouTube and look up something along the lines of Deepwoken best PvP build, and then they just copy the most recent video, or at least attempt to, before making their way straight back into the Chime of Conflict. Not before joining 16 Discord servers dedicated to new builds every week, though. In stage 6.5, you got banned. This is actually a pretty common stage for you chronic Chime players. Getting banned, whether it's temporary because you decided to be a bit too toxic for Deepwoken, permanent because you did something a bit more than a bit too toxic for Deepwoken, or chase banned because you doxed someone whose build you didn't like fighting against. Getting banned at some point is very common within the Deepwoken PvP community. The funny thing is, if you get banned, most of the people who do this get mad enough to the point where some of you guys file appeals because you don't believe, and yes, I've seen this, it'll be in the next ban appeals video, but word for word, the N-word shouldn't count as a slur that would get me banned. It's insane how bad some of you will stretch things to try and get them banned, but whatever. Stage 7 always starts with change. Not in the Metamancing player, not even in their build. Well, maybe a little bit in their build, but in the game. An update. Maybe it's on a Friday, maybe it's on a Saturday, or a Sunday because they've been really delayed recently. Regardless, something was nerfed. And maybe something new was added, and this is a huge addition. Maybe it was due to normal power creep caused by nerfs, maybe something new and broken got added to the game with 63 new crits. Regardless, the Metamancer no longer sees their original build as the strongest that it can be, so they make a new one, utilizing whatever they see as the strongest, hoping it'll carry them even another 20 elo in Chime of Conflict. And most of the time, it does even more than that, especially when new weapons are added because people aren't used to parrying them or their 50 crit variations yet. Stage 7 was just the beginning though. In Stage 8, the Metamancing player now switches builds basically every update. They have like 20 Deepwoken character slots, using the rest of expendable slots to farm Moon's Eyes for their next slot that they're going to make in a week, because it is now a constant weekly behavior to switch builds every balancing update until they finally stop. And by the way, the drip on all these builds is the same. They're probably a Vesperian wearing Vanta Black with some trash spiky hair. And also, I said that they finally stopped for a week. You really thought Metamancing players would ever stop making new builds until they quit the game? Good one, man. At Stage 9, the Metamancer starts experiencing exhaustion. They're getting tired of all the progression. They really just want to play the game without needing to make builds because the progression is easily the worst part of this game. Many players get burnt out once again at this stage, only fueled by the dopamine they get from seeing their elo go up. Many of these Metamancing players hit top 250 quite easily because of their new builds every week being hard to counter. Stage 9.5 is next, and this stage is probably the rarest, but occasionally Metamancing players will resort to black marketing and paying people to boost their accounts and elo so they can flex harder. Because they don't actually care about being good, they just want people to think that they're good. Here's a big case of this, a player by the name of Elite who put it on his mom that he did an account boost. A few days later, he was then proved to be boosting. Fly high, Elite's mom. At Stage 10, the Metamancer begins to feel empty. They no longer enjoy Chime. They're angry when they lose, and when they win, they no longer feel anything. It really is just a loop of sadness from playing Chime, which is just bad as a whole. I feel really bad for those of you who chose Chime as your preferred method of playing the game. Next is Stage 11, Mastery, and very few will reach Stage 11. This is the Mastery stage for Metamancers. To master the meta, you must become one with the meta, capable of changing your entire build or weapon on builds within just moments before the next update comes out, before a hot fix or a patch comes out to nerf your weapon, to carry you up another 50 elo. Players who master the Metamancing strategy will usually go on to be top 50 or higher players, maybe even top 10 if you can handle it well enough. This stage will actually bring you out of the emptiness and bring you into a new peak that will usually result in you finding joy enjoy again as you reach new heights. But it usually doesn't have much gratification after a while, because one season of Godseeker level is really all you enjoy until it becomes your new standard. Even if you were to become the #1 player in the game, how long are you gonna enjoy that? You're #1 for 1 season? Sick. You're #1 for 2 seasons? I guess that's cool. And the longer it keeps on going, the less cool it gets until you once again feel nothing. Even rarer than the mastery stage is true happiness and joy. Only by quitting Deepwoken can you truly achieve stage 12. This stage isn't obtainable by Deepwoken players who generally stick with attunements because they're stuck on something, which is why Bloodrend and Metamancers are the only two with a freedom path from the final game stage that I put in these videos. Bloodrend players are newer and haven't had the game sink its fangs into them, and Metamancers are so used to switching around, never holding on to things, leaving is potentially possible if they just apply that to their life. If you've played Fear and Hunger, think of it as Legard and his 4 soul types. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't bother. But those who reach stage 12 will find true happiness in life. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't expect another one of these anytime soon or on PvE players, because PvE is lame in this game. In fact, I'll give you the PvE stages video right now. Stage 1, new player. Stage 2, you don't like PvP. Stage 3, you make a PvE build. Stage 4, spam mantras at M1 spam and crit spam through every enemy and boss to win. Yeah, that's about it. Check out the live channel. I hope you all enjoyed. Shoutouts to YouTube members Pickle, Bacon, Green, Highcard, Brick, Goobka, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all. Have an amazing day, and goodbye.